I think it's pretty safe to say that over the years there hasn't been any movie hero who's more unsatisfying to play as than the Austrian oak himself, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Sure, Sly Stallone has quite a few lousy games under his belt too, but Arnie's gameography has to be seen to be believed, a never-ending Dead Sea Scroll of piss-poor times. There are the well-known awful games of course, the woeful Predator on the NES, the same system's hilarious Total Recall, and the dreadful business of Terminator 2 on the 16-bits. But the games under the radar are rubbish too. Look, here's Red Heat for the Amiga, and it actually manages to be worse than the film. What about The Running Man, presented here on the ZX Spectrum? I think John Parr sums this one up best.
This is no game.
Sticking with Brit computers, we've got entirely different versions of the classic films. Here's Predator for the Amiga, Terminator 2 for the C64, and Total Recall for the ZX Spectrum. Well, are any of these games good, I hear you ask? Of course not, they're quite phenomenally terrible. And let's not forget the grand champion of terrible movie tie-ins, Last Action Hero, the second worst game on the Mega Drive, even worse than that on the SNES, and one of the worst games ever made in general. Now the world-weary Arnie fan may well ask just what else is out there. And well, there isn't really all that much. There are a couple of good, or at least okay, Terminator 1 games, but they're not really Arnie titles, are they? They're Michael Biehn games, and you're fighting against Arnold. So with those left out, there's really just one title left, True Lies, released in 1994 for the Mega Drive, the SNES and a bunch of other consoles. It's the film where, as usual, the well-spoken British villain, in this instance Hari Kumar from The Jewel in the Crown, gets some nuclear missiles and threatens to blow shit up, but Arnie calls his bluff and blows him up instead. Shaundy is saved, and everyone lives happily ever after. Well, apart from Bill Paxton, of course. It happens to be the one major James Cameron film that people really struggle to remember in conversation, even though it was #1 with a bullet at the box office. But how did the game do? After all the terrible, woeful games of years past, can this game break the cycle and be good? Well, actually, yes it can. True Lies is, rather surprisingly, a pretty damn good game indeed. True Lies succeeds where all other Arnie games fail for a simple reason. In this one, you're actually allowed to play as Arnie. Just look at all the other bad Arnold games and you'll see a common theme. Most of them make Arnie impotent way beyond Viagra. If you're even allowed to use a freaking gun, it's usually under protest, and the gun will just be shit anyway. Most of the time Arnie's stuck with punching people, and really Arnie isn't Steven Seagal in this department. He doesn't meditate and spiritualise before snapping people's limbs. He chomps cigars, votes Republican, and wields guns that couldn't even fit into one of his Hummers. True Lies finally does the right thing. It removed the punch button forever and added the film full of lead button. Arnold has an infinite ammo pistol and plenty of other weapons besides. Shotguns, grenades, flamethrowers, and of course the almighty Uzi 9mm. Terrorists piss blood out of every orifice once sufficiently shot to shit, and if a civvy happens to get in the way of the crossfire, well gee, that's just too bad I guess. Something must have really changed. The previous year, Arnie cut the balls off the Last Action Hero tie-in by not allowing the developers to put a gun in his hand, and now he's gone all 360.
180, you stupid spaghetti slurping cretin. 180!
So yeah, this is an Arnie game alright. Don't forget to keep a low profile, Harry. It's not all about the violence though. True Lies is a very competently made game. Arnie's finally got some moves. Not only can he strafe, but he can roll out of trouble. It's useful in a pinch, and also he can breach the hell out of a door and just start spraying. Going toe to toe with the baddies does feel like a challenge, especially when you're trying to avoid killing those bystanders. They can duck in and out of cover just the same as you can. You can't just rush through the game like your average run and gunner. If you do, you'll lose and every single person in the world will die. It reminds me a lot of one of my all-time favourite games, the Chaos Engine. Both games even kinda look similar, and they both play like a thinking man's blaster. The civvies do make the levels feel a bit more alive, even if it's a bit silly to have these dumb yuppies strolling around checking their watches, yelping into their phones or conducting a frickin' Tai Chi class while bullets whiz past their heads. I would rather have them milling about than have a completely empty shopping mall. So what about bad parts? Well, the music is awful, so damn repetitive and tinny, and some of the stages don't even have music. The game looks pretty bland as well. It's a shame that a good game like this ends up being presented like a dog's dinner, but when you're dealing with movie times, that is so often the case. In the end, I would rather have the game itself shine despite lousy graphics, rather than looking good and playing like somebody who's just cheated at cards at Sam Rothstein's casino. However, one other thing I would like to whine about is that True Lies can get a bit wearisome as time goes on. The later levels lose all the amusing civs and become much more like long mazes filled with badniks, which can just get really boring. Aside from a Harrier level very late in the game, there isn't much in the way of mixing things up, which makes that Harrier stage even more annoying because they actually did bother to do it at one point. All I can say is, a horse stage, my kingdom for a horse stage. So True Lies isn't going to challenge the likes of Alien 3 or Aladdin. It sure as hell isn't that good. However, it is in the next best league, and it's also boosted up the ladder by being the only good Sweats' Knickers game ever released. So if you actually want a game that feels like you're playing as Arnie, and who the hell doesn't, or if you just want a decent shooter to while away the hours with, then you could do a hell of a lot better than this 18-year-old game for a largely forgotten movie released on a dead console system. Let's all hear it for True Lies. Yay! Ugh. Just end the bloody video.